And live from Brussels, it's ZN Live. Welcome to episode 394. So we're going to get to that 400th episode. It's absolutely crazy. I'm Phil Weiss, ZN CEO and founder. My co-host today is Evie, who is an account manager at ZN, looking after a whole bevy of clients. And she was busy yesterday at the Place du Luxembourg, giving snacks to people. And today our fantastic guest is Sevim. We've spoken to her in the past. She is an influencer on Instagram, but of course her day job is working at the European Commission in policy. And what I find most fascinating about you, Sevim, is your work as a communicator, doing this outside of office hours, as I understand, and having over 28,000 followers, and talking about a range of different issues, different topics in it, I think a very interesting way. So I'd like to start by asking you, what motivated you to get started, and how did you kind of start, and how is it going now since, I think, the beginning, which was 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, totally. First of all, welcome to everyone, and also thanks for having me, Phil, Evie. I'm looking forward to our conversation. But how did it all start? I mean, honestly, from a point of frustration, where I was looking for something like what I'm doing now. So I embarked on this journey of finding a person who summarizes EU Green Deal policies in a very easy way, because I was just coming from a lazy point, to be honest. I didn't want to read nor the regulation nor the press release. So I was looking for crispy summaries, how to get the idea of what this one regulation is about. And I couldn't really find it, or maybe, in the meantime, there's a bunch of different streams of exactly doing that, right? But I didn't find it on Instagram, at least. And that way, I remember asking a friend of mine, posing this idea, and they were all a big fan, which I was really surprised about. And I started it as an experiment, seeing where it should go. And recently, I rewatched my very, very first video, announcing it on my personal account back in the days to my friends, that I'll be changing the theme of my account a little bit, since it's so integrated into my life, not only from a career perspective, but also passion perspective. And the video is just very cute. I love watching back and see the development of what happened over the years. It's been now 3.5 years or something that I do this. Crazy, by the way. I would have never imagined it, but that was also my starting point, to be honest. I didn't know whether I'm going to continue it. I didn't know whether I'm going to like it in the first place. I didn't know what I'm going to do exactly either. I called it the EU Commission Diaries, which obviously in the meantime, the name changed to EU Green Deal Brief, because I noticed I was doing more briefings about the policies. But as I said, something that I figured out on the way, while months were developing, while I was experimenting, seeing what works for me and who I am in this entire story as well. It became what it is now, namely briefings about energy and climate policies, and young professional or sustainable young professional tips, career tips, etc.
Yeah, and I think the content that you produce is really interesting. There's some great videos, some explanatory videos, as you said. And I think that's a very entrepreneurial mindset, when you think, okay, I have a problem, nobody's fixing it for me, so I'm going to do it myself. I think that's a fantastic initiative to take. But what I want to ask you is, so how difficult was it for you to start doing this? Are you, and you've said, actually, I was watching your interview in September 2023, where you said, I'm not a professional communicator. I'm just doing it on the side. Now, if honestly, and I told you this several times, what you're doing is very impressive, and it's not there. The Instagramming content isn't really a fully developed profession. You can't really do studies for it, so you need to do it. So tell us a little bit, what is it what are the skills that you need to be able to do that? And then for those people who want to follow your example, how much time does it take to be able to do this?
Yeah. I love that you put it under the term entrepreneurial. It could be also labeled as naive, starting something like this. And I think honestly,
That's
it's a
what we
mix
are.
of both. I really do think I was very, very naive starting it, completely clueless. And I consider this one of my strengths, to be honest, in anything that I embark it with this naiveness of just trying out to find out. I think this is really like my life motto: try out to find out. Because there are two things. One, I'm not the most important person in the world, so if I fail, it's fine. And second, I'm also not afraid to be seen trying. I think it's a really important concept. Like, who cares in the end? But I mean, it's a beautiful thing to be seen trying and not to be afraid of doing so. And I think that's the main thing actually when I also interact with people on Instagram who want to start a similar journey. That's the biggest thing holding them back. What will other people think? And I'm like, honestly, whatever. Like, if it takes off and you're successful, like, well, you proved them wrong. And if you try it and it doesn't become successful, like, you tried. Like, this, and people will forget it. Like, in the end, we're not the most important people in the world either, like, passing through experiences. But that's on like one of the pillars, let me say. When it comes to like how I create my content, or like how it works with this work-life balance thing, my number one priority is my work. So it's, that always dominates my agenda, that always dominates like the things that I do all around. So that's a clear given already. Um, but it's like this inspiration spurges that come once in a while. And honestly, I would say like I spend probably like 5 hours per week, and sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. Now during summer break, it was less. Also, the commission is changing, so there wasn't like a lot of new announcements to be reporting on. And taking that break, or like going with this motivation spurges, is something that is the guiding effort for me. I'm not a perfectionist. Also, can be seen as a strength or like as a weakness from other perspectives as well. But I'm fine with doing mistakes, or like if it's not perfect, or if I again like forget to number the slides in 1 2 3 4, but everything is 1 1 1, or little spelling mistakes here and there. I think that's part of the process of growing as well, and part of the process of showing that this is that we're human in the end, communicating about the things. I mean, being really accurate on the content is number one. Like, there's no errors to do there. But essentially what happens is I see new policies coming up, or like a new press release happening, super interesting new policy, and I'm like, okay, let's summarize this. So I take the press release, I see like what are the main takeaways. So how would I explain it to my family, like, or my little brother who is not really in this EU or politics bubble at all. And then ask the so what question. Like, while you're reading specific information in the press release and you're like, oh, okay, this is a takeaway, I'm like, okay, but so what? So what with this takeaway, or so what with this policy? And I think that changes like a little bit the way that you're thinking about what you're going to communicate. But secondly, also, why is this post important to the reader right now, beyond knowledge acquaintance, or like knowledge transfer? What is it that could be useful for them? And just to give a practical example, for example, yesterday I was sharing about the Draghi report, or like the state of the energy union report, and I was thinking like, okay, why should they know about this? And I'm like, well, if I'm in a specific sector and these reports are giving kind of like a stream, or like a guideline into the future of what things might be important, it's going to give me as a young professional a young advantage, or like a advantage of like, let me have a quick look into my section of my sector. Let's see what the recommendations are and what the state of art are. And who doesn't want to, like, bring new ideas into the workforce, like come up with like, it's like, yeah, but this is what the drag, like it's something really nice to quote on. I went now all over with my answer, but let me stop here and you ask a couple of follow-up questions to get the best out of the answer.
Definitely. Actually, I really enjoy that you already answered to my question regarding, it's like how do we simplify, complexity when it comes to policy language for, it's like your audience. I do love the fact that in your profile you have explored multiple different formats of content posting, such as videos, carousels. So my question now would be, which format do you think works best for your audience? And also, if you have any tips to share regarding building, and navigating this, online network that you have managed to build over the years with over 28 K of followers and people that are engaging with you.
I mean, experimenting with different formats has been definitely my way to go to understand what works and what lands on people, what makes them see or like really take the information inside. And carousels is one thing. And while the algorithm doesn't really favor carousels, well, while I've heard that Instagram is now going to push carousels again more, whatever, it's like not my expertise area, let me say. I just heard it. I just love them a lot because they really like this quick pitch of like, okay, 4 things, da da da, easy to look back into or like find again. But I've been experimenting with videos as well, like short little videos of tips, for example, like inspirational videos, like, oh yeah, I've been 4 years in Brussels and my life looks like this or something. It's going a little bit into the cheesy area, but I've noticed that it just reaches a lot of people and a lot of new followers stream in because of that type of, well, in the end, cheesy videos. So it's a means to an end. That's how I always see it. So I'll jump a little bit over my shadow there. And lives is something that I've been introducing more recently as well, where I have interviews with, I don't know, with my head of unit, for example. That's how it all started. Like, so many people were curious about my boss, and I was like, okay, I was asking my boss, like, okay, do you want to have a conversation and introduce yourself? And honestly, it felt like a boyfriend reveal or something. Like, so many people were so curious who my boss is. It was amazing, but it was a beautiful conversation as well that we were having there. A lot of tips that he was sharing, giving some insights into, like making people within the commission a little bit more accessible, or like noticing that there are a lot of people behind this institution. That was one. With my DG, for example, with like the spokesperson of the, how do you communicate? How does he communicate? Completely different way of communicating. So I realized that these formats work out really well. I was really surprised about how many people tune in and how many people rewatch it, how many people talk about it again, or really go back to it. I was fairly surprised. I was thinking of turning it into a podcast as well, so people can listen to it on the go.
Mhm.
But well, if there's anyone out there now during the live stream that would like to help me and to turn it into podcast, I have the entire infrastructure set up and I know how to do it, but it's been just a bit time consuming on that end, but hit me up on this. But exactly, so this is something that I've been exploring. But one thing that I noticed, one of the interviewees didn't have Instagram, so we tried to do it on a platform.
Mhm.
Nope, didn't work.
Yeah.
Didn't work. I think there is this beauty of like getting the Instagram notification someone is live, and then you just tuning in, seeing whether you like it, you not. Like this easy access thing, I guess, is a good one to cover there, or like to valorize on. And yeah, exactly. So these are like the different formats that I've been experimenting with. But tips and policy summaries, I think this is what defines me, or like my profile in particular, and that's what I've been loving to do as well.
Amazing.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people, say, especially in the communication world, that the commission does struggle to communicate to the citizens about what it does. And I think you said, that's what got you started initially. You wanted to find that information. And there are a lot of projects, some initiatives, and some things that are done quite well. But I think you've done some work that's a very interesting example. So has it actually, and you are obviously said you've done a stream with your boss. So does your team, what do your colleagues say about your Instagram persona? And has the commission, maybe DG Com or somebody say, hey, maybe this is something that we can learn from, and we can maybe train or encourage other people, or even make this more part of a formal part of your work? What's happening there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this happened very early onwards where DG Communication did reach out to me, and I did work with them for a couple of months on a part-time basis doing one of my postings, let me say. And it was a beautiful experience, and all for me from a learning perspective as well, because all of a sudden I saw like how institutional social media is being done, and honestly, it's impressive work that's behind it. I don't think we realize. I mean, at the time, I didn't realize myself what time schedule that they're working on. And the perception of time is completely different. I remember like I was saying like, yeah, by the end of the day I have it done, and they were like, no, we need it for like 1 hour maximum. And it was like so it was nice to peek into their work, and I think we learned a lot from each other in that sense as well. And you'll see some reels that I did back then for the comms department as well on the European Commission social media. But it's nothing that I want to pursue myself professionally. So that's why I've been, keeping my distance in that sense to professionalize it or to make it part of my job. I love it, but I love it as a hobby. I love it as a thing on the side, and I love the takeaways or like the lessons learned that I have that nourish my work when it comes to the policy area that I'm involved in. But that's it's very separate from each other, and I love to keep it that way. And yes, like a lot of people in my department do know that I have these activities, and like sometimes we joke about it here and there, or like when something great happened, I share it with my team. But it's nothing that defines my personality at work. It's very separate, and honestly, I love to have these different hats. Like I love to be like this very person who's really on construction and buildings at work, and that's my label in the office, and then have like this communication EU influencer type of badge or label when I'm outside of the commission. And I think it's a beautiful balance in that regard, the technical and the more creative, outgoing, inspiring type of world, let me say.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Now, in terms of choosing what topic you're going to talk about, we've talked about the content in terms of policy, in terms of climate change, and then you've also started to talk a lot about applying, helping people on how to apply, which is a completely different topic. If the young people want to apply, so why did you pick that topic? And how do you actually decide? Is it really, okay, this is just something that I've been discussing with some friends, or I heard, or some of my audience is asking me about? So how do you make your content and your focus? How do you decide that?
So like career advice for young professionals has been always like a pillar, not as prominent as the briefings part, but still it's been always like continuous things that I've been sharing, because there were just always a lot of questions in that regard. And as I said, because there are not new policy updates or something from the commission side, I was like, okay, let's rely a bit more heavily, or like valorize or use this opportunity of free time to talk a little bit more about the career aspect and career advice. And it's also, so that was like the background thinking of that at the moment. But when it comes to how I produce my content, it's everything that you said, to be honest. It's stuff that's coming on my desk, like, because I do get press summaries as well, or like I get to hear about like all the new policies that are spearheading from our department, or is it conversations with friends that inspire me more for like the first day thoughts posts, for example, which are more like thinkings or like observations, insights that I share more on a personal basis. And a lot also what the followers are asking for. I started doing these questions on my stories more as like, okay, what do you want to know? And I love the answers as well. Like the answers which are questions again towards me, but some questions are like as if I'm deciding the fate of the European Union and I have all the answers. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how it's gonna go. It's really funny, but I very much appreciate it. And some answers or like some questions were like, what is the newest or the latest news in general, like what's happening at the moment, like what's the status right now, which I really loved as well. Or yeah, a lot of like career advice questions, or what's my take on a specific policy or whatever. And this is a separation that I do on my Instagram for sure. I don't go into my opinions. I present stuff and people can make up their own opinion. And I don't agree with everything always. I don't disagree with everything always. I mean, it's just what it is. So it's more like an informative knowledge transfer and for people to make up their own opinion, than me trying to induce what I think is the right thing to do. And obviously, as I said, when it comes to values, I share once in a while like my motivation struggles, or like my thoughts about the world in general. But I try to give it always a positive spin, because it's most of the time we're going through the same struggles. And I think that's also the main difference between, well, institutional communication and me doing my thing. I guess people can relate to me. They feel exactly the same struggles, motivation peaks or lows, same interests. I mean, it's really like a community of people that where we are similar to each other, but think completely differently and are completely different at the same time. I really notice it in interactions with the community itself. But yeah, so it's unity and diversity. It's mutual understanding, and it's relatability in all of this as well.
Now, I have a friend who's working at the commission. She's young. She's starting in her area. She's a big fan. She follows you. What would you say? And she's quite good at Instagram, and she communicates. What would you advise her to do? Would you say this is something that you should really think about doing to just maybe learn, or is it something that you should only do if you're suddenly drawn to it? So basically, what would you say? What would be your advice, and how should she get started?
So the very quick answer would be attend the workshop that we're about to organize to become an EU influencer thingy. So it's I think the first time that I'm announcing this. I mean, we're still in the preparatory phases, and there's going to be like an institutional one and one from like non-institutional, let me say, so from the outside world. Oh my god, this sounds terrible. But so we're working on like developing two workshops, as I said, one with my department for people who are interested in doing something similar, and one for anyone in Brussels, essentially, to be able to do the same. And hopefully in the future, once there's the structure set up in general, online too, which I would love to do, because one dream of mine is to see many people, not only in Brussels, but all over, communicating about their loved subject area, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the EU, which I would love. That would be my preference, like a EU topic, and then EU policy area X, your topic of interest. But I have also like a lot of students that would love to communicate about their subject area, for example, on Instagram. And I do think there are ways to do so, to valorize on. And there are two motivations for this. One, I think there's too much crap on social media in general, and I would love to raise the percentage of quality content, and we can do our part in doing so. And Brussels is a great place to get started, to communicate about our work, about daily lives. What is the life of a, I don't know, policy officer, a lobbyist, of whatever it looks like. And there's definitely a balance that one can draw between the professional, content secrecy, let me say. I mean, obviously we cannot share everything online, and the inspirational, still informative that we can draw. So the workshop would be part of finding that balance, and finding your branding, finding your niche in general, what your content pillars would look like. So it would be like a crash course on what I've learned over the last few years and condensed into like a multiple session workshop, and hopefully people will find that interesting. So to your friend, I would love if she would participate in that. And more on that hopefully very soon on my Instagram. Yes.
Amazing, and we're looking forward to that. I couldn't agree more with the, let's say, what a day in the life of content, like could basically result to, because I think that people are very inclined towards content that is a bit more personal and is also more relatable. And maybe, it's like that's why, you have managed to build an audience that is so broad and big and, follows every step of yours, because having seen your content, I think, it has to do with, it's like the reality checks and things that are adaptable and applicable, it's like in all the lives of people, especially in the EU bubble. My question would be, how close do you think, it's like being a brand ambassador can support, your professional life overall? So, for example, brand ambassador of yourself, not specifically, it's like of an organization, of a company, but more about how your social media presence can kind of like enforce all the other elements of your professional life, and whether you have, examples, except yourself, of course, that you have seen this, work in action.
A very good one. I realized this only later, like how beneficial certain skills turned out that I learned from my social media activities turned out to be for my daily job as well. Reading quickly. So I have an engineering background. I always hated reading. I was never really good in it, and I couldn't keep my focus up too high for like a lot of text either. And that's something that you need to do at work. And by doing these content summaries very quickly, and I was always under time pressure, I didn't want to spend a lot of time into like this content creation. I realized it was a bit of an exercise of me being able to do that, but also quickly extracting information from text, something that I wasn't really good in, that I turned out to be becoming better. Understanding the audience. I really, depending on everyone always says this in communication, understand your audience, always ask. But I had no idea how crucial this is, and how crucial it is to understand your persona that's sitting in front of you. And that's actually not that alienating, because essentially it's a previous version of us, or of me as a student, me in my the first time I came to Brussels, me like sitting in a lecture hall and like having no idea about what's going on in Brussels at the moment or about the importance of it. So being able to create these personas and learning how to communicate with them helped me also in my work to understand different personas. Is it in my department? Is it in my stakeholder environment, etc.? So changing the narrative and understanding how to do that, really, really great. And then presenting information very concisely. It goes hand in hand with the first one, but being able to understand what words add to content as something that I realized, or like that I learned over that experience. I'm someone who talks a lot, and I still talk a lot. I think you can tell now as well. But I learned when to stop. That's something that I honestly that I learned from all these talks and like speeches and, Instagram communication or stories. Actually, the biggest one is stories, because you have 60 seconds. And I'm like, how did these 60 seconds pass? I didn't even come to my point. Yeah. So that really helped me to train my being on point when I communicate about my at work, is it in Teams or in meetings or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great learning experience, actually, because you create your content, you can see what works, and you can gradually improve on, the things that you think have the most impact. So we'll definitely be looking out for that workshop and happily promote it on our own channels, because we believe that it's extremely important work. So now let's move to the recommendations. So, Sevim, what are your recommendations for our viewers?
So, just to quickly put it out there, magazines, paper magazines, I've been very much enjoying. And if you would ask why, I've been going through this phase of like overflow of information, and I wanted to keep up with world news, but at the same time, I was like, man, does it really matter in the big picture, all these small little announcements that we have here and there? And at the same time, I wanted to like have like this analysis perspective, but from a well done way, and not like this superficial description of what's happening, but no, and like, there's a difference between analysis and describing what's happening. And I came across The Economist, which was recommended to me, and I love it. Like I fell in love with her articles. They're concise, very well written, like cutting the crap and like putting a good analysis out there and writing stuff that I haven't read before either. So it's really like nurturing my thinking about world events. But when it comes to nurturing my thinking in general, I've really enjoyed New Humanist and Philosophy Now. Philosophy Now is completely different to the way I think. Like it's philosophy or this engineering mindset is like it's they can go hand in hand, but it doesn't come natural to me, let me say. And they help me to be able to think in different streams about societal topics in general, which I very much appreciate, because societal topics are not black and white and philosophy is not black and white. So understanding these different ways of thinking and different ways of looking into one situation or one happening has really nurtured my thinking in general. And I love that it's physical. I put my book away Sundays usually, I sit, I have my coffee, and then it's like reading time. And maybe it's romanticizing it a little bit, but that's what paper does, I guess. I've been very much enjoying that time of the week, let me say.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of The Economist. When I was at Oxford, basically the essays that you have in The Economist were told, this is the model that you have to follow for your essay, especially in PP. But basically, yeah, I think it's a great way to just step back, see things from a broader perspective, because you're not in that kind of daily or hourly cycle of the news.
Yeah.
And very interesting that you talk about long form content when you're kind of doing a lot of short form video. And I'm totally like you. I think I really like the mix. I think reading is extremely interesting when in a certain state of mind, and then you consume content through multiple different channels, and that helps you to learn through different ways. Evie, what are your recommendations this week?
So I do agree that print is back. I see, it's like more and more, print and books and magazines, it's like physical ones paying back. So I think it's a trend that we can definitely, see upcoming in the next years, probably. My recommendation, however, is a podcast, and it's the Marketing Companion podcast. I stumbled upon it very recently, and I've actually been enjoying very much the conversations. They're super engaging. The content is also very insightful and enriching, and I think that it also provides, tactical views on how you can implement things directly in your own strategies. Mark, the host, is also very knowledgeable, but also while also being informative. And he has this kind of like human side that I really enjoy, like in podcasters and interviewers overall. So I highly recommend it. It has humor, it has authenticity, and a very refreshing touch.
Excellent. Well, my recommendation this week is actually a podcast from Tara Palmieri. It's called Someone's Gotta Win. Somebody's Gotta Win. She was a journalist in Brussels. She was actually at Politico at some point. I met her a few times. She's a fantastic journalist, and she kind of makes politics quite entertaining, but also very insightful. This week, I've been completely kind of absorbed by the whole post-debate analysis discussions. I kind of got sucked into watching the debate. It was just fascinating. But then I was watching all the analysis, and she has done several discussions, from different perspectives. The particular podcast that I'm sharing actually is one where she was saying, be careful how you watch the debate, because if you watch it through with liberal eyes, you're not going to understand how Trump supporters are going to see the debate, which is very different. So, the Democrats are ecstatic about the debate, but actually it might not move the needle the way, they think. So very interesting analysis, great politics. The other book I wanted to recommend, actually, I didn't put that on the list, but I want to add it because of what you were saying, Sevim. So this is a book called The War of Art. And actually, it's very much a book for creatives and for people who want to create content. And it's got very specific advice but breaking what they call the resistance. So when you don't want to do something, and I think that's what you were talking about, a lot of people want to create stuff, but they're afraid. They're afraid of failure. They're afraid of mistakes. So they just don't do it. And I think, the key thing is to break through that, as you eloquently said and demonstrated in practice. You just have to do it, get it wrong, try again, adjust, learn, and the journey is really what it's all about. So with that, thank you so much. We could go on for hours, and next week we will be diving into a couple of key questions at the EU Influence event on the 20th of September. We are pretty much sold out in terms of registrations, but there's a waiting list. So if anyone's interested, just let us know, and we'll see if we still have some space. But looking forward to it, and it'll be, of course, streamed online at Cardo on Friday. So thank you so much, Sevim. We will see you next week, and we'll see you online. Have a fantastic weekend. Bye.
Bye. Thanks a lot.